Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookercast, the podcast where books come to life.
And I'm so excited to dive into another amazing story with all of you.
Whether you're a bookworm or just love a good story, this is the place for you.
Every episode, we explore incredible books, talk about their stories and characters, and share insights that'll make you fall in love with reading all over again.
All right, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Get comfortable, and let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're diving into something I just finished, and I have so many thoughts about it. Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True. Have you read it?
I have.
I just devoured it. A psychological thriller. And man, it just left me with so many questions about how she crafts such a twisted and suspenseful story. But thankfully, we have an expert here with us today to help untangle some of those threads.
Always happy to be here and discuss.
So for our listeners out there who maybe are not as familiar with psychological thrillers, what are some of the key things we should be looking for? What makes one really stand out?
So, a great psychological thriller often hinges on a few key elements.
Okay.
Unreliable narrators, masterfully crafted suspense, and of course those shocking twists that just kind of leave you reeling, questioning everything you thought you knew.
Okay, so with those things in mind, let's jump into the world of None of This Is True.
Okay.
So the story kicks off with this seemingly ordinary encounter. We've got Josie, it's her 45th birthday, and she's at a gastropub celebrating.
Right.
And she runs into Alex, a successful podcaster, who, it just so happens, is also celebrating her 45th birthday.
Yes.
What did you think about this initial setup?
Well, I thought what was so fascinating there is that Jewell really immediately establishes this contrast between these two women.
Yeah.
You have Josie, who comes across as, I would say, very normal, ordinary. And then you have Alex, who has this seemingly perfect life, a successful career, her circle of friends,
Right.
overall confidence. And so it's almost like this classic setup for a psychological thriller. You have these two lives colliding,
Right.
one that's seemingly perfect, the other kind of yearning for something more.
Yeah. And that yearning is, like, palpable in Josie's narration.
Right.
We learn that she's married to Walter, who, without giving too much away, is quite controlling.
Yes.
And then there's this mystery surrounding their daughters, Roxy and Erin. And we're given these little hints that, like, something isn't quite right beneath the surface of this, seemingly normal family life.
Exactly. Jewell is a master of layering, and she slowly reveals these details, creating a growing sense of unease, I think, in the reader. We're given glimpses into Josie's turbulent past,
Right.
her difficult relationship with her mother,
Yeah.
and how she kind of ended up with Walter. And all of these elements contribute to this unsettling feeling that something is about to go very wrong.
And it does. Things really take a turn when Josie proposes this kind of intriguing idea to Alex. She wants Alex to feature her on her podcast. Josie, somebody ordinary, on the verge of this big change.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Well, and of course, Alex, always in search of a captivating story for her podcast,
Of course.
it takes the bait. And I think this decision really marks a turning point in the narrative.
Right.
Because as they delve deeper into Josie's life, Alex starts to uncover these unsettling truths
Yeah.
that really challenge everything that Josie has presented.
And this is where that unreliable narrator element really comes into play, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we are constantly, as readers, questioning Josie's version of events.
Right.
Is she a victim of circumstance, like she initially portrays herself to be?
Yes.
Or is there something more sinister at play?
Well, and that's precisely what Jewell does so well. She expertly uses Josie's voice to manipulate, I think, our perceptions as readers.
Yeah.
She kind of feeds us just enough information to make us doubt our own judgments.
Right.
So we're left wondering, like, what is Josie's true motivation?
Yeah.
What is she hiding? And how far is she willing to go to kind of achieve her goals?
Yeah. What about Alex's role in all of this?
Yeah.
I mean, she's the podcaster, she's the supposed objective observer.
Right.
But does her ambition, her desire for a really gripping story, make her vulnerable to Josie's manipulation?
That's such a good question. And it's definitely a theme that Jewell explores throughout the novel.
Yeah.
I think Alex, despite her experience, becomes very entangled in Josie's web of deception. And it raises important questions about the nature of truth, particularly, I think, in the age of podcasts and true crime.
Right.
How much of what we consume is filtered through someone else's lens?
Yeah.
How can we, as consumers of information, discern fact from fiction?
Oh, that's chilling.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information.
Right.
It really makes you think about the responsibility of content creators
Right.
and the potential for stories to be manipulated, really, for personal gain.
Absolutely. And none of this is true serves as this stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving,
Yeah.
and that even the most seemingly harmless individuals can harbor dangerous secrets.
So we've got this unsettling foundation.
Yes.
We've got two women with very different lives brought together by chance, an unreliable narrator,
Right.
and a podcast that serves as both a platform for truth and a tool for manipulation.
Yes.
What are some of the pivotal moments in the story that really stood out to you?
Oh, there's so many. Well, one of the things that I think Jewell does so masterfully is she uses these seemingly insignificant details to foreshadow later events.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, the incident with the stolen magazine from Alex's recycling bin.
Oh my gosh.
It's such a subtle detail, and it's easy to dismiss, but it really speaks volumes about Josie's obsessive nature.
Yeah. I mean, that really creeped me out
Right.
because it was just like this crack in this facade of normalcy, like a little hint of the darkness that's lurking underneath. It's almost like she's giving us a glimpse into Josie's mind.
Yes.
And that need to insert herself into Alex's life in this like really strange and intrusive way.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is that Alex, at least initially, kind of downplays this red flag.
Right.
Because she's so caught up in the potential of Josie's story,
Right.
the allure of having this really compelling podcast episode,
Of course.
that she overlooks these warning signs.
It's a good reminder that I think we're all susceptible to manipulation, especially when it comes to stories that like tap into our desires or our ambitions or our need to connect.
Right.
I mean, Alex, despite her experience, falls prey to this very human tendency.
Absolutely. And as the story progresses, we see Josie really masterfully exploiting Alex's compassion and her desire to help. Remember that incident where Josie shows up at Alex's doorstep
Oh, yeah?
in the middle of the night, claiming that Walter has abused her?
Oh, that scene was so unsettling. It's like classic manipulation tactic. Right?
Yes.
Playing the victim to gain sympathy
Yes.
and control. And of course, Alex, being the empathetic person that she is, takes her in without hesitation.
Right.
It's a decision that will have really far-reaching consequences.
It really does. And it's such a brilliant example of how Jewell slowly shifts the power dynamic between these two women. I mean, Josie, by inserting herself into Alex's home, into her life, she really gains a level of control that she wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
And this control extends to the podcast itself, right?
Sure.
Because as Alex is recording Josie's story, she's unwittingly giving Josie this platform to really shape the narrative, to present herself in a particular light. It's almost like Josie's using the podcast as a weapon in a way.
Yeah.
To control not only Alex, but also the public perception of her.
Exactly. I mean, this is where the story really becomes a meta-narrative, I think. A commentary on the power of storytelling itself.
Yes.
I mean, we're forced to confront this question. Who controls the narrative?
Right.
And how can we, as listeners, as consumers of media, critically evaluate the stories we're being told?
It's a question that really resonates, I think, especially in our current media landscape.
Yes.
We're bombarded with these stories,
Yeah.
often presented as truth.
Right.
But how much of what we consume is filtered through someone else's agenda?
Exactly.
It's pretty sobering.
Yeah, it is. And I think none of this is true challenges us to really consider these questions in such a visceral and compelling way. Jewell doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of human nature.
Yeah, she really explores, I think, the motivations behind manipulation and the ways in which our desires and our vulnerabilities can be exploited.
So let's talk about some of those darker aspects.
Okay.
Those pivotal moments in the story that really kind of shift our understanding of the characters and their motivations. The revelation about Josie's daughters, particularly Roxy, stand out to me. I mean, for a good portion of the book, we're led to believe that Roxy is missing,
Right.
possibly a victim of Walter's abuse.
And this is where I think Jewell's mastery of suspense really shines. She utilizes that missing person trope,
Yes.
playing on our natural empathy
Right.
and leading us to believe one thing
Yeah.
before, expertly pulling the rug out from under us.
The moment we finally meet Roxy and we hear her version of events, the entire narrative shifts.
It does.
She's claiming that Josie is the abuser, the manipulator,
Yeah.
the one who drove her away.
Right.
It's like a complete 180.
It is. And it forces us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about Josie.
I mean, suddenly those glimpses into her past,
Right.
her turbulent relationship with her mother,
Yeah.
it takes on this new and sinister meaning.
It's like a light bulb goes off.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute, Josie's a master manipulator.
Yes.
Capable of weaving these elaborate lies to control the narrative and everyone around her.
And this realization is further cemented when Alex discovers the truth about Walter's death.
Yes.
I mean, the discovery of his body hidden away in the garage, it really confirms our worst fears. Josie is not just a manipulator.
Yeah.
She's a murderer.
That scene was so chilling. It's like this visceral reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives.
Right.
And it really makes you question the nature of evil.
Mm.
You know, is it something we're born with, or is it something that's cultivated over time, you know,
Right.
through experience and circumstance?
It's a question that philosophers have grappled with for centuries. And I think Jewell, through her characters and their really complex motivations, offers, I think, a very nuanced and thought-provoking exploration of this age-old question.
So we've talked about Josie's manipulative nature,
Yeah.
Alex's vulnerability,
Yes.
and the shocking twists that kind of propel the story forward.
Right.
But what about Jewell's writing style?
Yes.
What makes her stand out as an author, I think, in this genre? I think one of the things that really struck me about Jewell's writing is her ability to craft these characters that are both relatable and utterly terrifying.
Yeah.
Like Josie, for example.
Right.
She's this character that evokes this strange mix of empathy and revulsion.
Yes.
I mean, we can kind of understand to some extent the pain and resentment that have fueled her actions.
Right.
But ultimately, her choices are monstrous.
Yeah, and what's remarkable is that Jewell achieves this complexity without ever excusing Josie's behavior. You know,
Yeah.
she allows us to glimpse the humanity behind the monster, but she never lets us forget the devastating impact of Josie's actions on those around her.
And that impact is explored through these multiple narratives, right?
Yes.
I mean, we see events from Josie's perspective, we see them from Alex's perspective, and we even get Roxy's perspective.
Yeah.
And it allows for, I think, a much richer and more nuanced understanding of everything that happened.
Right. And this technique of using multiple narrators also really reinforces that theme of unreliable narration that runs throughout the novel. We're constantly being challenged to question who to believe,
Right.
whose version of the truth is the most accurate.
It's such a brilliant way to keep the reader engaged and off balance.
Totally.
And that ending, with Aaron's perspective, that's like the master stroke.
Oh, I know.
It's like this final piece of the puzzle.
Oh.
And it just recontextualizes everything we thought we knew.
Yes.
We finally see the full extent of Josie's manipulation
Yes.
and the truly devastating consequences of her actions.
Aaron's narrative, I think, is particularly powerful because it really highlights that long-lasting trauma that Josie inflicts on her daughters.
Yeah.
It's this reminder that the ripples of deception and violence
Right.
can extend far beyond the immediate victims.
And then there's that final twist.
I know.
The letter
Yes.
that Josie sends to Alex
Uh-huh.
months after everything is unfolded.
It's chilling.
It's chilling, right?
Yes.
It's like this reminder that even though Josie's gone, her presence still lingers.
That letter is pure psychological brilliance. It's
Yeah.
like Josie is taunting Alex, almost reminding her that she was merely a pawn in her twisted game.
Yeah.
And that line about fate bringing them together again.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, chills.
Chills, right?
Yes.
It certainly leaves the door open for a sequel, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
But I think even without a continuation, that letter creates this sense of unease, this feeling that the story isn't truly over.
Exactly. And it's a testament to Jewell's skill as a writer
Yeah.
that she can create that lingering sense of dread even after the final pages turn.
It really speaks to the enduring power, I think, of psychological thrillers.
Yes.
They just tap into our deepest fears and anxieties in a way that, like, no other genre can.
Totally.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into None of This Is True, what are some of the key takeaways that you hope our listeners will kind of ponder?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first and foremost, I hope they really appreciate the power of storytelling itself. I think None of This Is True really demonstrates how stories can be used to manipulate, to deceive,
Right.
but also to reveal truth and to connect us on this deeper level.
It's also a really good reminder, I think, to be critical consumers of information,
Yeah.
especially in this age of podcasts and true crime.
Right.
I mean, we should always be questioning the narratives that we're presented with
Right.
and considering the motivations of, who's telling those stories.
Behind a storyteller, yes.
And finally, I really hope that this deep dive encourages our listeners to explore the world of psychological thrillers.
Yes.
It's such a fascinating genre.
It
It
is.
can be so entertaining and thought-provoking. I mean, it challenges our perceptions. It
Yeah,
forces us to confront these darker aspects of human nature.
it does.
It's just brilliant.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the twisted world of anonymity. None of this is true.
Yeah.
We hope you found it as gripping and insightful as we did. And if you haven't already, we highly recommend picking up a copy of the book and experiencing Jewell's masterful storytelling for yourself.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of BookerCast. We hope you enjoyed diving into it as much as we did. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this episode with your fellow book lovers. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next deep dive. Bye for now, and happy reading.